Yes. Well, hello again, friends, and welcome once again to these Thursday evening Zoom meetings. And today we are going to be covering a little different topics than the last few weeks. We're going to start with discussion of the Wesak Festival, and you can see the slide in front of you. Okay, the Wesak Festival, what does it represent? Well, in the esoteric world, in the theosophical world, and in the Buddhist world, the Wesak Festival is a very important event. The historical basis of Wesak is related to the birth and the renunciation and the enlightenment and then the passing away of Lord Gautama Buddha. And this major spiritual festival is celebrated at the full moon of Taurus each year. Now, there's an esoteric basis for this because the Lord Buddha is no longer walking among us. He is on a very high inner plane. But the esoteric basis is the annual Wesak gathering of the hierarchy, and we will be talking about that and what it represents, what the ramifications are as the meeting unfolds. Very good. Okay, the birth of Prince Siddhartha Gautama, that was his name. He was born to a minor king, a king of Kapilavastu named Suddhodana. And I have determined through my astrological research that it was the 5th of May, 576 BC in the Lumbini Grove in Nepal. Now, on the left here, you see the left image, photo is a photograph of it's a photo from Indian times. I don't know the exact date. And the Buddha is depicted in two places. He's coming out of his mother's side, Mahamaya on the right, and then he's appearing standing up in the bottom. So it's sort of you could say almost a cinematic version of the birth of Buddha from this carving many centuries old. The photo on the right represents the birth of the Buddha, or the birth of Prince Siddhartha Gautama from the Gandhara period, and that was a Buddhist kingdom in Afghanistan in the early part of, sorry, I'm not exactly sure when. I'd have to look it up. I'm not really sure. But anyway, there are many of these carvings all around the world, and of course, paintings and depictions of this very important event in the Buddhist world and for us even here today, many centuries later. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is a more contemporary painting, as you're probably aware. We see Queen Mahamaya standing under a Bodhi tree and holding onto a branch. And according to the legend, the newly born child took 7 steps and proclaimed in a loud voice that this was his last incarnation as a human being on the earth. That's the legend, that's the story. Whether it's correct or not, well, we don't know, but it certainly signified that there's something unusual, something different, something very special about this birth. Next slide, please. Okay, through various research, I was able to construct what I consider the accurate horoscope of the birth of Prince Siddhartha Gautama, and that was in 576 BC on the 5th of May. The Buddhist tradition tells us that he was born at midnight at the full moon. And so that is what I have constructed this chart to be. Now, let's look down there in the part where the sun is. What we have here is an extremely rare conjunction of planets, of the outer planets Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. I have read that this conjunction only occurs at intervals of approximately 100,000 years, and I am not in a position to confirm that, but I can tell you as an astrologer, this configuration is extremely rare. It's certainly not appeared during my lifetime or centuries past, and I don't know how many centuries in the future we might have to wait before it reforms. We see the sun in conjunction at 6 degrees of Taurus, in conjunction with this amazing, it would be Pluto, Uranus, Neptune conjunction. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in the higher vibrations or higher octave represent spiritual growth, evolution of consciousness, And so we have here a being who was destined to make a big mark and bring humanity a great step forward in relation to consciousness, spiritual understanding, and so on and so on. I do believe this is accurate because when we look at the position of Jupiter in the second house, the story goes that the Prince Siddhartha was born into a life of luxury. His father, Suttodana, spared no expense to bring up his son, and he was basically, he had, I think, 2 palaces or 3 palaces, one for the rainy season, one for the cold season, and there was a third one as well. When we look at the fifth house of the horoscope, we see the planet Venus, and the Prince Siddhartha Gautama had one child before he left to seek enlightenment. And so we see there's a square aspect, a 90-degree aspect between Venus and Jupiter. And to me, that indicates the renunciation of his privileged life, with his wealthy life, from house 2, money, possession, finance, to house number 5, children. And I suppose we could talk about this for a long time, but in any case, I am rather pleased, possibly even proud, to have been able to present this. I do believe it is the historically accurate chart of Prince Siddhartha Gautama. Time will tell in that regard, I suppose. Next slide, please. Okay, when he was 29 in 540 BC, and also, strangely enough, at the full moon of Taurus, he decided to renounce his princely life to leave behind the possibility of him becoming king of the Kapilavastu kingdom in the future, and seek ultimate liberation from the wheel of rebirth. Birth, maturity, old age, death, over and over and over again. And of course, that the concept of rebirth, reincarnation, was a central tenet of Hinduism, which was the, you could say, official religion of that point in time. And I'm not going into the details of the life of Buddha. They can be accessed on the internet. There's a whole lot of information about his life and the various events, whatever. But this was an important one because at age 29, he decided to leave the palace, renounce his claim to be king of Kapilavastu, and also leave behind his wife and child. Next slide, please. Okay, there's a story. Once again, I won't go into the details. He basically studied with various teachers in India at that point in time. He mastered states of internal meditation, what we call samadhi in Buddhism. And then at age 35, in the year 541 BC, he attained enlightenment under a Bodhi tree. Now, the story goes that just prior to enlightenment, he was tempted by the daughters of Mara. Those are the 2 lovely ladies to the right and left, the bottom left. They basically appeared and tried to seduce him away from the path, but according to legend, he was able to project how they would look 50 years into the future from that point in time, and of course, they appeared to his inner vision as old hags. So that didn't work. He passed the seduction test, and then Mara decided to attack him, to use fear to dissuade him from enlightenment. So you see the four images on 2 on either side, the upper side. They were the attack of Mara, and the story goes, the legend goes, that the Lord Buddha saw it coming, but instead of fighting, instead of resisting, he touched the ground. He touched the earth with his right hand, and asked the earth to witness the fact that for many, many incarnations prior to the incarnation of Prince Siddhartha Gautama, he had tried to walk the spiritual path for the good of humanity. And with that gesture, Mara, the symbol of temptation in the Buddhist world, departed. Next slide, please. Okay, so 541 BC, and guess what? Full moon of Taurus. He became enlightened at a place today known as Buddha Gaya. And Buddha Gaya, as you might imagine, has become an international place of pilgrimage for Buddhists from all over the world. I had the good fortune to spend some months there back in, I think it was back in the 70s, and quite an interesting scene indeed. I haven't been there for some decades now, so I don't know what it's like now. But of course, there's a temple commemorating his enlightenment, and you'll meet Buddhists from all nationalities if you ever are fortunate enough to get to Buddha Gaya and spend some time there. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the enlightenment of of Gautama Buddha, because he became Gautama the Buddha upon enlightenment. Now, there's something very, very interesting in this chart, and Chandra may be able to see it. It is a cardinal cross in active signs. Let's start with Uranus at the top. Uranus opposition Mercury at the bottom. And then Saturn rising on the ascendant opposition Neptune on the descendant. So my interpretation of the horoscope, and by the way, after I looked at this chart this morning, I thought it probably was one day later than that actual 5th of May. It's probably on the 6th of May when the moon was in conjunction with Uranus, I believe. So this chart, I believe, is one day too soon, one day premature. The cardinal cross in astrology is the highest, represents the highest state of consciousness available. And it is prominent in the horoscope of initiates, even disciples who are striving for enlightenment. So quite an interesting horoscope. You'd have to probably meditate on it for quite a while. But this is, I believe, a mostly accurate chart, probably one day early, but still an accurate horoscope, generally speaking, indicating his enlightenment. Okay, next slide, please. All right. In nations such as Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, that's Burma, and others, and the majority of the population there is Buddhist, they celebrate the life of Lord Buddha and its important event at Wesak. And they have a festival every year. I spent about 5 years living in Sri Lanka, and I was fortunate to be present at Wesak, I think 3 or 4 of those years, and it was a big event, especially for the temples, the monasteries there, lots of lay people. And the photo on the lower right-hand side, you can see the devotees, the lay devotees, gathering presumably at a monastery, and they're all dressed in white and all celebrating the birth of Buddha, or they call it Wesak Poya. The photograph on the lower left is a photo of some of the Wesak lanterns, which they create in Sri Lanka and put either outside their homes or inside their businesses, or I think this is some sort of public building. So these events all occurred on or near the full moon of Taurus. Now, the exact date of Wesak Poya, or the Wesak festival, changes from year to year, but it usually falls in May. Sometimes it's early, sometimes it's in late April. Next slide, please. All right. What is the spiritual hierarchy? It's also known as the Great White Brotherhood, the Assembly of Masters and Lady Masters. It also has other names of Earth. Well, this concept was first broadcast to the world in the late 19th century by Helena P. Blavatsky, founder of the Theosophical Society, and her followers, and it continued in following decades. The hierarchy is the combined assembly of masters and lady masters. They are spiritual seekers from past ages and different religions who have attained various stages of enlightenment or initiation. And that's a huge topic in and of itself. We could talk for hours or even days or even weeks about what is enlightenment, what are the stages of initiation, how do you get there, what are the effects, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a vast topic. I can only skirt the surface, but they have attained these various stages of enlightenment or initiation. Now, these masters and lady masters remain on Earth and work, but they're mostly in secret. So you're not going to find a door that says, Master so-and-so, please knock after 7 a.m. or whatever. They're mostly in secret, and they work to raise the consciousness of humanity in all areas of life and living. And that, too, is a very vast topic when we cover the various masters and what they do and their jobs and whatever. Okay, these are 2 photographs of Helena P. Blavatsky. She was born in Russia. I think it was around the 1830s, if I'm not mistaken. And she had a very eventful life. She was one of the first Westerners. In fact, as far as I'm aware, she was the second Western woman to visit Tibet after Alexander David Neil of France. Blavatsky was the second. And then in Tibet, she claimed to have met a group of enlightened beings whom she called the masters. And she studied with them for a period of time. I'm not sure. I think it was several months or some years, perhaps. Then she was told to go back to the West, specifically to the United States, and form a society through which the ancient wisdom teachings could be released. And that was the beginning of the Theosophical Society, which was first formed in 1875. Next slide, please. Okay, let's talk about the head of the hierarchy, Lord Maitreya. The drawing in the center is an image telepathically received by a gentleman named David Andreas. That's his nom de plume. I think he has, that wasn't his actual name, and I forget his actual name, but he's known as David Andreas, and he claimed to have contact with various masters of the hierarchy. He was active in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. I personally believe that, yes, he did have that contact, and he was able to draw various impressions psychically received of various masters. And this is how the Lord Maitreya appeared to him, probably sometime in the early 1930s, possibly the late 20s, but I think early 1930s is more likely. The statue on the left is a Buddhist image of Maitreya, the coming Buddha, from Shigatse in Tibet. Beautiful image. And the image on the right is that, as you probably recognize, of Lord Sri Krishna. Well, what are the past incarnations of this great being, the Lord Maitreya? He incarnated, according to Theosophical teaching, as Lord Sri Krishna circa 3000 BC. And that was an amazing incarnation for anyone who studied Hinduism or that era of Hindu culture. Now, it's not so well known that Lord Maitreya, and I'm presenting this as from the perspective of the Theosophy or esoteric studies, just so I'm completely clear on that. And that's what we believe. If you wish to believe differently, if you wish to accept what traditional religions say, of course, that's your right, and we respect it. But this is the Theosophical perspective, the esoteric outlook. Okay, Lord Maitreya overshadowed the Master Jesus during his spiritual mission in Israel, or I guess it was known as Judea then, the 1st century AD. And the mission of Master Jesus is well known. I won't really touch on that here. Maitreya was the Father in heaven to whom Lord Jesus referred in his teachings. And if you study those teachings, you'll find that reference quite a lot. My Father in heaven. And of course, it's part of the, just admit Gretchen here. Okay. Now, to esoteric students in the Western world, that's us, Maitreya is known as the Christ because he overshadowed Master Jesus during that incarnation. And the Christian world, the Catholic world, talks about Jesus the Christ. In the esoteric world, from where this information is coming, Lord Maitreya was/is the Christ, and he overshadowed Master Jesus, who in a strange way absorbed that divine consciousness and became Christ-like himself. It's a very complex subject to discuss, but that's what we believe in a nutshell. Now, to Eastern students, he is known as the coming Buddha, because that's the next incarnation we expect the Lord Maitreya to take as the coming Buddha of Earth. Now, to Theosophists, that's persons like myself, Chandra, and some others in this meeting, he is known as the future Buddha of Earth. Next slide, please. Now, this is a quote from our late and beloved teacher, Anandatara Shan, who claimed to be a channel for the Lord Maitreya. Another long and complex subject, which we cannot go into in much detail. But this is what she wrote. The Lord Maitreya has been the Bodhisattva, the Christ of earth, since the Lord Gautama became the Buddha 2,500 years ago. The Lord Maitreya is a great son of God, and on the inner levels is now also a Buddha. Hence, we should know him as the risen Christ Buddha, who will become the Buddha of earth in 500 years, through an earthly embodiment for which a number of disciples, initiates, and masters are now preparing. And in that simple paragraph, there is a vast amount of information with huge, humongous, galactic implications. And once again, we can't really cover that, but the implications are there for those who have inner knowing or inner seeing. Next one, yeah. Again from Anantar Shan, the Christ of earth, also known as the Bodhisattva, is the head of the hierarchy, the inner spiritual government of earth. This spiritual government is a group of enlightened, very advanced spiritual beings working on the 7 rays. Now, most of us here in the Theosophical tradition have heard about the 7 rays. If you haven't, they are basically divine streams of energy which condition ourselves as individuals, and in fact, all forms and functions of life on Earth. Once again, a vast subject. We could be talking about this for weeks. Spiritual beings working on the 7 rays who guide and govern the earth and humanity on the path of evolution according to the will of God. Once again, a simple paragraph with monumental implications. All right, let's talk about some of the masters. Lord Maitreya is not the only one. He's the head of the hierarchy, but there are quite a number of them, and we could spend an entire session or two just talking about the different masters. We don't have the time for that, so I just thought I would cover a few different masters with whom you might be familiar. All right, Lord Master Jesus, this is him in his current body. And once again, it was an impression from David Andreas, whose real name is Brian Ross. He wrote a book called Through the Eyes of the Masters. It was first published in 1932. An extremely interesting book. I've had a copy of this for many years now, decades in fact. And his comments and statements about the masters are very, very interesting. And even though written in 1932, so that would be what, about 90 years ago, going on 90 years ago, it still has relevance, some relevance anyway, to the contemporary world in which we live. Now, according to David Andreas, the Master Jesus has an abode or domicile somewhere in the Middle East. I think it was Jordan somewhere. I don't know if that's still the case, but it may possibly be, who knows. Okay, next slide, please. And now let's talk about Lady Master Mary. She's the mother of Jesus of Nazareth, of course. Now, as I mentioned in the Zoom session, I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe 3, Lady Master Mary appeared to 3 peasant children in Portugal in 1917, and she manifests there as the Lady of Fatima. And as the Lady of Fatima, at Fatima, she gave them certain teachings. And in fact, she revealed 3 revelations or prophecies or secrets, and they pertain to the world at the time. In 1917, of course, the world was nearing the end of World War, especially Europe. Europe was ending the end of World War I, and a time of great turbulence and turmoil and chaos in the world. She gave out 2 messages, or the so-called 2 secrets, 2 prophecies, which are well known, but she also gave out a 3rd message, a 3rd secret, which has been hidden by the Catholic Church for decades. And we talked about that in that Zoom meeting. I'm not going to go over it now, but the 3rd secret of Fatima, basically, you could say, is a prediction about the end of the world and the destruction of the Catholic Church, from my research and study of that 3rd secret. So you can imagine why the Vatican isn't too keen to release information about that, but enough information has been leaked, so we get a pretty good idea what the 3rd secret of Fatima actually is. Next slide, please. Okay, here's another master, Kutumi Lal Singh. He's presently in a Kashmiri body. Now, some of his past lifetimes were Pharaoh Akhenaten of Egypt, and that was the 14th century BC, way back there. And if you know anything about Egypt or ancient Egypt, you would know that Akhenaten was the great reformer who tried to promote the concept of a single deity symbolized by the sun or the disk of the sun. And he upset the priesthood of the time and so on, long, long story. Okay, he incarnated as Saint Francis of Assisi, who lived from 1181 to 1226. My wife and I, Mary, were able to travel to Assisi. Let's see, that was 2001, I believe. And you can still feel the energy of Lord Kutumi, or Saint Francis, who was the incarnation of Lord Kutumi in the cobblestones in the churches, the many churches of Assisi. So we were very fortunate to be there. He also incarnated as the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan, who was builder of the Taj Mahal in the 17th century. And one important incarnation, which I forgot to include when I was preparing the slide, he is said to have as Pythagoras, the great Greek mystic and teacher of mathematics and geometry way back in ancient Greece. I don't remember the century, but it was somewhere in the BCs. Now, this is just a brief overview of some of the masters and lady masters and what they have done in past lifetimes. We could once again talk about this subject for days, weeks, months, or longer, but we don't have the time. So next slide, please. Okay, this is teaching received via our late teacher, Ananditara Shan, the three roles of the Lord Maitreya in this current era, as we prepare for his incarnation as the Buddha of Earth, which is predicted to be in about 500 years' time. And if any of you have the question, well, why do we have to wait so long, 5 centuries, for Maitreya to manifest as the Buddha? The teaching that Ananda gave is that preparation for such an enormous event, amazing event, has to take a lot of time. And 5 centuries is just about enough time for the various disciples, followers who want to be in that incarnation with the Lord Maitreya in whatever capacity, to get their act together and to focus their intention and their spiritual steps toward this great event. Okay, let's talk about the three roles. Well, first and foremost, to inaugurate the new age. Okay, I forgot, I think the age of Aquarius somehow didn't get in there. But it's we're in the age of Aquarius, as you probably know, or most people know, most people believe. Controversy about exactly when it started, et cetera, but we're in Aquarius and we're seeing great changes. One of the big reasons we're seeing the immense battles on Earth that we're seeing now is because many of the world leaders, governmental, financial, spiritual, are still tuned into the Piscean consciousness. And we could talk about what the Piscean consciousness may represent. That was another vast discussion, which we don't have time to go over. We're in Aquarius now, so that Piscean consciousness is fading away, and a new consciousness is coming in, which is more of equality and brotherhood and all that implies. And of course, the old guys and some old girls as well from the Piscean age don't want that to happen. They're not at all eager to relinquish control, so they're fighting the arrival of the new age, which of course is an impossibility. They can only delay the advent of the new age. They can't completely stop it, but they are fighting as much as they can against it. And we can talk about how that, what that battle looks like in various parts of the world. For instance, in the United States, where President Donald Trump is basically fighting a really hard, deep battle against the deep state in America. And that's a whole other discussion we could talk about for days or weeks. Okay. The new age is paving the way of the heart for the children of the heart. And that's another vast subject. Chandra has done a lot of research on this. In fact, I think, Chandra, you just published a book, did you not?
Yeah, it's something that I wrote some years ago, and it's to do with the children of the new civilization, and it's kind of based on the astrology and also just some inner visions to do with this transition as we go into the age of the heart.
I think it's, as a general summary, we could say that we're coming out of the age of the mind in Pisces, or at least for many people, where a lot of us have been mentally polarized and still are. I mean, I'm quite obviously mentally polarized, as my wife Mary can tell you. Um, Although we won't be having that discussion here. But we're trying to move our consciousness from the mind into the heart, and heart related values such as compassion, sympathy, kindness, and so on. Not an easy transition, not an easy at all. But that is the way of the way forward into the age of Aquarius, so we've been told. All right, the second role is to radiate a constant stream of love which enfolds and encircles humanity and the earth. Lord Maitreya is the Lord of love, and the love he emits or radiates is considerable and overwhelming. And it's his duty as the coming Buddha, the next Buddha, to radiate that love to all corners of the earth, all individuals, all nations, all communities. It's a very long story. Once again, a lot can be said, but we don't have the time. All right, the third role is to unify the East and West through blending the essence of two of the world's major religions, Buddhism and Christianity. And we are told that the New World religion will be some sort of blend or mixture or combination of the highest principles of Buddhism and Christianity. We don't really know what that religion will look like. We have maybe some hints or intuitions, but we're not totally sure. But that's the prediction that Maitreya will manifest that new religion. All right, here's a decree of loving attunement with Lord Maitreya, which we've been given through Ananda Tarashan. Nothing can harm me, nothing can disturb me, nothing can upset me, for I am a child of Maitreya, and so live in his heart. His shielding embrace protects me by day and by night, and my family as well. The only thing that he asks of me is that I love him, and that I love the world in which I reside. Then there is only light, and I am that light. A very simple invocation, with extremely profound spiritual, esoteric implications. And for mentally polarized persons like myself, it's not that easy, but we try to do the best we can. Next slide, please. Okay, the prediction given to us by Ananda Tarashan is that the Lord Maitreya will body as the next Buddha in about 500 years' time from now. But how will that actually happen? What are or would be the necessary preconditions for that great event? Because the appearance of Buddhas on Earth is a very, very rare event. I mean, the last one was Lord Gautama Buddha, and that was over 2,500 years ago. Maitreya is said to incarnate as the Buddha in 500 years of time. So there'll be about 3,000 years between the appearance of Gautama Buddha and Maitreya Buddha. And 3,000 years is a long time, my friend, however you wish to look at it. Next slide, please. This is interesting. The past combines and links in with the future in what could be considered a remarkable historical loop. This journey begins in the era of the Lord Gautama Buddha, back in the 6th century BC. Now, as mentioned, Prince Siddhartha Gautama lived in Kapilavastu Kingdom before his renunciation and search for enlightenment. His wife was Yasodhara. Next slide. They had a son, Rahula. But when Siddhartha renounced his life as prince and future king at his 29th birthday, in order to seek enlightenment and liberation from the cycle of rebirth, he bade farewell to his wife and child. And the story, the Buddhist legend, is that he gazed upon them as they were sleeping in their bedchamber. And he was tempted momentarily not to go. But then he realized that was his duty, dharma, destiny. So he made the important and fateful decision to leave them behind and renounce his position in the kingdom of Kapilavastu and become a wandering ascetic. Next slide, please. Now, Princess Yasodhara continues to live at Kapilavastu and raise Rahula. After she passed from that incarnation, she continued to re-embody, as we all do. Many of her subsequent incarnations are known, and she also had some incarnations as a male, but most of them cannot be revealed for one reason or the other. But one lifetime we can, or I felt I could, identify as a future incarnation of Yasodhara was Hildegard von Bingen. Now, she's well known in the Christian world, especially the Catholic world. I think she lived in the 12th or 13th century. She was the abbess of a nunnery, I think it was present-day Germany, and she was indeed a remarkable figure. In fact, she was one of the very few individuals that the Catholic Church has honored with the title Doctor of the Church. And I think there are only like 23, 25 persons in total over the entire history of Catholicism and Christianity that have been given that honor. So very, very special incarnation indeed. Next slide, please. All right, what is the esoteric theosophical view of the Lady Yasodhara, and what is her role in the cosmic scheme of things? To state the obvious, Lord Gautama Buddha is no longer an incarnation, but he does have a connection with Earth from the inner subtle levels, which is revealed each year at the Wesak festival. The Lady Yasodhara continues to incarnate and is training to become the regent of Earth, the role she will have to play in the age of Maitreya, which is the coming age of Aquarius. Now, this is very interesting, and it's also controversial. We received this teaching from Ananda. You won't find it anywhere else, I don't believe. The Lady Yasodhara is predicted to become the physical mother of Lord Maitreya in about 500 years' time, when he will incarnate as the next Buddha of Earth. Now, we're told that that incarnation of Maitreya as the Buddha will not be a long one. We don't know the exact number of years. It might only be 30, 40, 50 years, which is not long, considering that Gautama Buddha was said to have been 84 years. His life was said to have lasted 84 years when he passed on. But after the Lord Maitreya departs from that life, Lady Yasodhara will continue Maitreya's teaching and mission. Now, here's where it gets interesting, very esoteric. The Lady Yasodhara is overshadowed by the white Tara, and that's a cosmic divine being known in Tibetan Buddhism. But the white Tara exists independently of Tibetan Buddhism. It has to be stated or stressed that she is a divine cosmic being. Tibetan Buddhists know about her. Most other religions don't, but it doesn't matter. She does exist, and she's a very powerful and wonderful being. The qualities of the white Tara are linked to the Lady Yasodhara through that esoteric arrangement, which is overshadowing. And once again, a very vast and complicated subject. We don't have the time to go into that. Through that overshadowing, she becomes the gateway of hope, where she can bring a portion of humanity, namely the children of the heart, to the feet of Maitreya in this age, this new age, the age of Aquarius, or the age of Maitreya in esoteric knowledge. All right, let's talk about the Wesak festival, how it's celebrated by the hierarchy each year on the full moon of Taurus, in a hidden valley in the Himalayas. This is the esoteric tradition, the theosophical tradition. It's what Blavatsky and some of her followers taught back in the early days of the Theosophical Society. Now, the masters and lady masters from all over the world, and it should be said that while not every nation is the abode or residence of a master or lady masters, or a lady master, they do live in a number of different nations right around the world. They congregate there and perform ceremonies which are under the direction of the Lord Maitreya. And we could talk about, for the next hour or two, about what those ceremonies are. They basically consist of the participants arranging themselves in various geometric symbols that we'll see in the next slide. Okay, this is one of the ceremony, the culmination of the ceremony, actually, when the masters and lady masters form a star, pentagram. And then, in the culmination of those ceremonies, a huge image of Lord Gautama Buddha. Now, it's not necessarily the Lord Gautama Buddha himself, as I understand it anyway. It's a projection or an image which does carry the energy of the Lord Gautama Buddha. It rises from behind the background mountains and bestows his blessings on the gathering. and that is the culmination. In the foreground, at the very bottom of the drawing, you can see a number of pilgrims, disciples, and it's said that, especially among the Tibetan population, many Tibetans, just ordinary Tibetans who believe in, this particular event, come to receive the blessings of the Wesak Valley on the full moon of Taurus each year. Next slide, please. It's a beautiful, beautiful painting by Peter Fick Christensen. He is an artist from Denmark. He spent several years in Australia. Mary and I had the good fortune of meeting him, I think, on 2 occasions. We bought a number of his paintings. This is Peter Christensen's version of how the Lord Gautama Buddha appears at the Wesak festival in the Himalayas, in the hidden valley in the Himalayas. Mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful image. And you can see the auric emanations that surround him, symbolizing his status as a supremely enlightened master. Wonderful image. Next slide, please. Where does that leave us? Although we cannot attend the festival in Wesak Valley, we can try to tune into the Wesak energies which promote higher consciousness, spiritual progress, and ultimately personal enlightenment. Now, this year, 2025, the exact time of the full moon of Taurus is 2:55 a.m. on Tuesday morning, which is the 13th of May, and that's only a few days away, as you're probably aware. The Wesak festival energies last for about 3 full days, thus from Monday the 12th to Wednesday the 14th. That time period is most propitious for spiritual work of whatever sort. So whether you're a Buddhist, Christian, Hindu, esoteric student, theosophist, this is the time to really concentrate, to really focus on spiritual practice and trying to attune your own consciousness to the divine consciousness of the masters and the lady masters, the great white brotherhood, or the hierarchy, the spiritual hierarchy of the earth. And I encourage you to make that effort. Okay, all right, some of the wording here got washed from the slide. Oh, there we go. Okay. The Wesak Festival Conclave, and that would be the Assembly of Masters and Lady Masters during the Wesak festival. Not during the festival itself, but either shortly before or shortly after, we're not really sure. Once again, full moon of Taurus. And Chandra has written, these are Chandra's statements here, these various five aspects, and some of them are problems, such as false prophets and religious wars, which they are trying to find a solution, to find some strategy or solution or path to give to humanity, those who are sensitive enough to receive it, to try to resolve these very serious issues. And I don't need to detail what we're looking at in the world today. It's not a very pleasant picture in many parts of the world. We don't need to talk about the details. You can watch the daily news and get your daily dose of insanity and human stupidity, arrogance, and greed, et cetera, on any given day playing out on your television screen. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is Wesak, the Wesak natal chart, Casper Dalesford. Now, Chandra, do you feel well enough to talk about this, or do you want me to?
I'm happy to talk about it, Zach. I just don't know how to get me back on screen. I think, let me try and fiddle with it. Somehow or other, it's not letting me. I'll just reclaim the host, Zach.
Oh, is this a CE as a host now? Yeah. Should I go ahead?
No, you don't do anything. I'm just trying to figure out it won't show my picture for some reason. God knows why.
Well, maybe
add a pin. I'll try a pin.
Okay.
Oh no, I'm still not there. This is what happened last time. We won't worry about it. I don't need to be.
Yeah, I think we just really need your comments on on what this chart might represent for us as theosophists and followers of the spiritual path and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's cast for the Australian Eastern Standard Time, so and I've done it for Daylesford, and I was a little bit gobsmacked to see that the destiny point, the North Node and Saturn were sitting on the ascendant, and of course that would be the case for Melbourne or for places around sort of regional Victoria, but it just seems to be that there's a bit of a focus around purpose that's connected to Victoria and the Wesak. And of course, that's not just Theosophists, that's anyone of good heart, anyone who's striving from the heart of compassion, any spiritual group, any family, any community group that wants to work to move forward into a better way of being on earth. The noticeable pattern is the big mystic rectangle, the blue and the green rectangle, and it kind of says that there are some people who will find themselves in the right place at the right time, connected in locally, internationally, and as support systems for each other. And then you can also see the big, what looks to be, it's a mutable Grand Cross, and from the esoteric perspective, the mutable, and that's only, well, I mean, Jupiter is squaring the nodes, and then focused on Victoria, it makes a Grand Cross. So I guess you could say that there are some parts of humanity that don't want to be in the next unfolding path that's happening for humanity. And there's a lot of divisions and separations, and some people, for whatever reason, maybe it's fear, maybe it's ignorance, maybe it's greed, maybe it's uncertainty, maybe they don't know who to trust. But, you know, the discrimination, the planet Jupiter doesn't function very well in Gemini, and it's square the past life point in Virgo and the North Node in Pisces. And so people need to basically find the connection between the head and the heart. And that's what Jupiter's trying to do here, is to link the head with the higher mind so that we can follow and find the way forward. There's so much we could say about this. Saturn, it's a very significant time here in the sort of around the Wesak in May and June in 2025, because a lot of decisions are being made that will impact at least the next 7 years and maybe a whole lot longer. Neptune's not long into Aries. Venus is in Aries. We have until I think February 2027 when Chiron finally leaves Aries to exercise our free will. And as Theosophists, we know that the spiritual hierarchy of Earth, they don't intervene. We have free will. This is a planet with an experiment to do with free will. But I think that once we get to early 2027 and Chiron leaves Aries, whatever it is that collectively humanity have chosen will be kind of locked in stone somewhere. And maybe there will be an intervention of some sort that comes from the Shambhala energy when Chiron moves into Taurus. It's hard to say. You look further at the chart, you'll see the stellium in Taurus here. That's Mercury and the Sun and Vulcan and Uranus. And this is the call that kind of says, connect to the soul, open to the path of enlightenment, find your connection and follow that light. And not only do we need to do this on a higher mind level, and we need to take a courageous leap of faith in whatever it is that we've been avoiding, but we also need to purify, that's the Vulcan in Taurus, our relationship to money. I heard on the radio the Australians owe billions on their credit cards. You know, we need to clean up our act on a physical and emotional, psychological and spiritual level in order to harness the energy of Taurus. And if we do that, we pick up the enlightened energy that connects us to the first ray. And if we fail to do that, we end up in a whole lot of conflict around everything in life. Yeah, I did. The number 22 is a master number. Now, I did look up the Sabian symbol and I haven't got it written down, but it was something like jewels in a jewel box, which I thought was particularly interesting because, you know, the heart chakra has the capacity to, when it's cleaned up, to reveal the jewels of compassion. And that's the opportunities that we have. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that, Zach.
Well, I think you've covered it in a nutshell. I can't really add any more. So thank you, Chandra.
Yep. Okay.
So we'll go to the next slide now.
Oh, that was just a few
That was
leaps.
the one that was, okay, yeah, right.
Yeah, so I will post this, and when you click the links, there's most of those links take you to Teachings of Anandas. This one here takes you to a couple of meditations I've done. I think we were possibly are we going to stop here, Zach, or are we going to keep going?
We're going to take a break and ask if there are any questions or comments on what we've just covered here.
Yeah, before we go into the questions or comments, I'll stop sharing that. And there I am again. I just wanted to see if I can share from my computer. If I can find it. Where is it, Chandra? No, it's disappeared, hasn't it? Here it is. This is just some Vesaks ago, I was meditating and I had this profound, beautiful image, which I've entitled The Vesak Within. And I'm just going to read it. And it's very hard when one sees something on the inner, because it's often far more profound than the words can capture. But what I heard was the Tibetan monks sounding the horns. And I saw the monks and I heard the horns. And that's just a picture of the little horns. But the ones that I saw were the very long ones that rest on the ground, and they're sort of a couple of meters long. And I knew that this horn sounding was announcing the coming of the holy ones. And then I was in a congregation and everything became very quiet and everyone was ready and there was an energy of peace. And then the Lord Maitreya, the fifth and the future Buddha of Earth, appeared, and he walked down from the inner levels steadfastly towards humanity. And he called us, anyone who was connected into his heart, to follow in his footsteps. And he was really, and the call was for a future following, not just in that immediate thing, but follow for, years, decades, incarnations. And then I saw an entourage, and there are some souls who were standing as grails, and they were referred to as the cupbearers, and they were collecting and distributing his tears and compassion and his teachings, and distributing them to humanity awaiting a needy world. And then there were other souls who were charged with protection, and they were referred to as his sword deliverers. Interesting phrase. And this is not a sword in terms of warfare, but rather a sword in terms of protection. And then I saw there were other souls who were preparing the path for his feet, and they were referred to as his wreath layers. And I saw them scattering rose petals before him and along the way. And this is the way of the heart that Zachary was talking about. And then within this ceremony of the heart, I saw that the energy of bliss was being captured in these grails and offered and shared with the world. And within this ceremony of the heart, compassion was being captured and offered and shared with the world. And this is what we know esoterically. We're told that there's a divine dispensation. But I saw that it was bliss, and then it was compassion, and then it was mercy that was captured and offered and shared with the world. And then truth was captured and offered and shared with the world. And then the Buddhas, 3 in 1, and this is Buddha Gautama, a Buddha Maitreya, and a Buddha from the future, Buddha Yasodhara. They appeared together. And then the whole congregation were immersed in a sea of cosmic fire. Okay, and then I noticed that we were in a valley and there were snowy peaks all around the Buddhas, and I noticed the sacred snow leopards appeared, and the snow leopards formed 2 circles, and one circle of the snow leopards was turning anti-clockwise, and the other circle of the snow leopards was turning clockwise. And if you've ever had a crystal bowl and you've struck the bowl and wound it, you know that eventually what happens is it emanates this profound sound. So as the snow leopards were walking in these circles around this ceremony, the energy of the ceremony was being gathered and sent out. So the energies were building and gathering and harnessing the bliss, the compassion, the mercy, and the truth. and it's being sent out to all those who love the Buddhas with this call for us to walk with them. And it was the most enormous wave. It was like a generating energy that became larger and larger and larger. And there was a sea of effulgent light and love filled with bliss, compassion, mercy and truth that then flowed out to the world. And of course, that's just words and they don't do it justice. But most of us, when we tune in at the Wesak, we feel this enormous love. We may not see anything, but I'm here to tell you that ceremonies happen. Most incredible ceremonies on the inner. Okay.